or a different way of working out, finding out the square root of a negative number. The square root of a negative number with as a number and as, and we have variables. Let's start off with, remember that, we'll start with a perfect square. So we'll say we have the square root of negative 36. All right, we know that from previous math courses that 36 is a perfect square, that the square root of 36 is 6, okay? Now, the difference between a negative square root and a positive, the square root of a negative number and the square root of a positive number is the negative sign. Now, we said in previous lesson that the square root of negative 1 is going to be I. So what we have to do is we have to split this up into our perfect square factor and our non-perfect square factor, okay? So in this case, we got 36. When it's a perfect square like 36, we leave it as 36, and then we're going to write times negative 1. All that goes inside our square root sign. And the reason, you'll see why in a few minutes, why we keep everything inside the square root sign. All right, so we already said the square root of 36 is 6. So we're going to cross out that and bring that 6 outside our square root, okay? And so that's going to put us a 6 down here, all right? We already said that the square root of negative 1 is going to be I, so we bring that outside, we cross through that, and that leaves us I. Since this was a perfect square, there was nothing else that stays inside our square root, so our final answer is 6I. All right, let's do another one. Let's go this time with the square root of 64. Okay, well, 64 is a perfect square, remember? 8 times 8 is 64. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, rewrite our radical, and write 64 times negative 1. All right, we're doing this because we need a perfect square factor and our negative 1 factor. Okay, so that's why we have to split it up into that, because we're finding the square root of each one. All right, so the square root of 64 is 8. So we cross through that, and we draw a little arrow so we know that we're going to put 8 outside of our square root. All right, so the negative 1, remember, is going to be I, so we're going to cross through that. Again, draw our arrow so we know we're going to bring it outside our square root, and leaves us I. So our answer for this one is 8I. Okay. Now, something I should mention is whenever we're doing square roots, that whenever it's a perfect square, you always want to consider that it could be positive or negative, because think about it. Negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. Positive 36 times positive 6 times positive 6 is, again, positive 36. So we should have a plus or minus here, okay? On some of the School G assignments you may see plus or minus, but for the purposes of this, if you just put positive 6I, then that would be sufficient for the quiz and test. All right? So that is when we have perfect squares. What if we have a non-perfect square? Let's go with 50, the square root of negative 50. All right? So we already said that 50 is not a perfect square. So what we have to do is find the highest perfect square that is a factor of 50. So what you can come over here and do is off to the side, come over here and write your square roots, you write your factors of 50. So we have 1 in 50, 1 in 50, 2 and 25. There's no factor of 3, no factor of 4, 5 and 10. Okay, those are our 3 sets of factors for 50. Now the one that has the highest perfect square is 25, because 50 is not a perfect square, 2 is not a perfect square, 5 is not a perfect square, and 10 is not a perfect square. So the highest one in this case, and the only one in this case, is 25. I mean, 1 is technically 1, but we can't really use that in the purposes of that, because that's not going to help us reduce the square root to a smaller number. All right, so we come over here, and because we're going to use 25, remember that 25 times 2 is 50, so we have to keep that there. Lastly, we're going to have negative 1, because remember, anytime you have a negative number, when you find the square root, you always have to have a negative 1 in your square root, because that's going to be something we're going to be able to pull out. All right, so 25, the square root of 25, we know is 5. So again, we cross it out because that's a perfect square, and we're going to put 5 down here. 2 is not a perfect square, so we can't do anything with that. So we're going to just leave it blank. Well, we're going to leave it as is. We're not going to touch it. We're not going to cross it out. It's going to stay inside our square root. And then again, square root of -1, we're going to bring outside, and that's going to be I. Okay? So now we're going to rewrite our square root with everything we didn't cross out. In this case, it was 2. Okay? So now our final answer is 5i times the square root of 2. All right? Next one. Let's go to another one. All right, we have, let's go with the square root of negative 98. Okay. Well, again, 98 is not a perfect square. So what you're going to do is list your factors of 98, which in this case are 1 and 98, 2 and 49, 3 will not go into it, 4 will not go into it, 5 won't go into it, 6 won't go into it, 7 will, because it's 7, not 7, I'm sorry, I apologize, not 7. 8 will not go into it, 9 will not go into it. And basically, we're not going to be able to do anything else. Well, I'm sorry, wait a minute, I take that back, I apologize for that. 14 will go into it, and it's going to be 14, 98 divided by 14 is 6. Sorry, no, 7, sorry, 7. I was having a brain fart. Sorry about that. Or a lapse in judgment, 7, and that's it. So there are no other factors that we can multiply. So those are our 3 factors. The highest one that has a perfect square in it is 49. So that's what we're going to be able to use, is 49. So we're going to come over here and find 49. The factor that went with 49 was 2. So 49 times 2 is 98. And because it's negative again, we'll write -1. Okay? So, again, 49 is a perfect square, so we cross it out and draw a little arrow so we know we're going to bring it outside. The square root of 49 is 7. 2 again is not a perfect square, so we're not going to be able to do anything with that. -1, we can cross that out and bring it outside, and that's going to be I. Okay? And so, only thing we have left under our square root sign is 2. So the square root of -98, the final answer is 7i times the square root of 2. All right? So now let's move on to what if we have a number and variables. All right, so let's start off easy. We'll start off with a perfect square. We'll say negative 100 x squared. Okay, so what you're going to do is, just like we did before, we're going to break it up into our perfect square factor, -1, and when we get to our letter or variable, I'll show you what we're going to do there. All right, so 100 is a perfect square. So we're going to write 100 times -1, and then times x squared. Now, if your exponent, so we're going to write over here, exponent is even, we're going to divide it by 2. Okay, so that's how we're going to find the square root of an even exponent. So when we come down here, we're going to say 100, the square root of 100, it's perfect square, so we draw an arrow and put 10 down here. -1, remember it's going to be I, so we'll put an I down here, cross out that. When we get to our exponent, because it's even, we're going to divide it by 2, okay? So when we divide by 2, 2 divided by 2 is going to be 1. So we're going to cross that out and again bring it outside, and we're going to put, remember 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're going to put a 1 right there. There was nothing underneath, nothing remaining under our square root sign, so we're actually done, okay? So our final answer is 10i x. Now, you don't have to put the 1, you can, but you don't have to. Whenever there's exponent of 1, you don't have to put the 1, but if it helps you to keep things straight, I don't have a problem with you leaving it as 1, but just know on the test or a quiz, the 1 is not going to be there. It's actually invisible. Now, I do need you to try to make sure you put it in the correct order. With tests and quizzes, they will be multiple choice, so you will see I and then your variables in alphabetical order. But if you were to put XI, I'm not going to count it off on a practice problem. But again, know that on a test or a quiz, it's going to be I and then the letter. Or Schoology assignment, it's going to be I and then the letter. All right, well, let's say we have a non-perfect square. Let's go with, I'm trying to think of a good one here. Give me a second. Negative 108. And we're going to say A this time, A to the second, B to the third. So we're going to throw a little curveball here. All right, so again, we're going to do it again. We're going to list our factors 108, which in this case are 1 and 108, 2 and 54, 3 and 36, 4 and 27, sorry. 5 is not perfect square. 6 and 18, sorry. Yeah, 6 and 18. 7 is not, we're not going to that. 8, we're not going to it. 9, we're not going to it. And 12 will, and that will be 9, sorry. So actually it was 9 and 12, I apologize, I got that mixed up there. But anyway, so those are our factors. The highest perfect square, if you noticed, is 36. 4 is a perfect square, as well as 9, but remember, we want the highest one. In this case, the highest one is 36. So we'll come over here, rewrite it as 36 times 3 times negative 1. That takes care of our numbers. Now we come over to our letters. All right, we have a to the second. Remember, it's an even exponent, so we're just going to leave it as a to the second. Now b to the third, now that's an odd number. So over here, if your exponent is odd, you're going to subtract 1 from it, and then divide by 2. What I mean by that is, okay, remember, 3 minus 1 is what? 2. But that 1 that we subtracted, we can't get rid of it. We have to just bring it out to the side, and we're going to have b to the 1. Okay, so I got a little bit longer here, but again, we need to do this to be able to simplify the problem. All right, 36 is a perfect square, so we're going to cross it out and draw a little arrow, bring a 6 down here. 3 is not a perfect square, so we can't bother with that. Negative 1, the square root of negative 1, we already defined as I, so we're going to cross that out. A to the second, because it's even, we're going to divide by 2. So we're going to say a to the 1, okay? Cross that out. B to the second, again, we're going to divide by 2, cross that out, and put b to the 1 right here. B to the 1, well, remember it's odd, but if it's odd, this is the one odd number we can't subtract 1 from because it's not going to help us any further. So if you have an exponent to the 1 power, it stays underneath your square root sign. So the only thing left underneath our square root sign is 3 and b. So we're going to rewrite it as square root of 3b. And that's our final answer. Okay? So let's do one more. What I'm going to do is I want to leave these rules here, so I'm actually going to erase this top problem up here. Okay, so if you'll bear with me. All right. And I'll kind of do it over to the side. That way it doesn't look exactly like that. So let's say we have, I'll take a smaller number this time. We'll say we have the square root of negative 32, a to the 4th, b to the 5th. I'm not throwing one more good measure, a to the 2nd. C to the 2nd. All right, so we come over here. 32 is not a perfect square, so what we're going to do is list our factors of 32, which are 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8, and that's it. 6 won't go into it, and 5 won't go into it, and 7 won't go into it. So those are our 3 factors. The highest perfect square is 16. Now 4 is a perfect square, but it's not the biggest. We want the biggest number, okay? So we come over here, and we're going to do the square root of 16 times 2 times -1. Okay, that takes care of our numbers. Now we're going to our letters. A to the 4th, that's even, so we're just going to write A to the 4th. Okay, B to the 5th, that's odd, and it's not a 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to write B, we're going to subtract 1 from the 5 and give us B to the 4th times B, remember, to the 1. Okay, because we can't get rid of it. And then lastly, we have C to the 2nd. Sorry, I kind of got a little, I'm going to try to rewrite this over here real quick so it's not as bunched up. Well, actually, I can write it over here. Sorry, 32, 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. Okay? All right, so now we're going to start simplifying and bringing stuff outside of square root. 16, the square root of 16 is 4, so we're going to bring that out and put a 4 here. 2 is not a perfect square, so we can't do anything with that. -1 we're going to bring outside, and we're going to cross that out and put an I. Okay? A to the 4th, remember, it's even, so we're going to divide by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so we're going to put A to the 2nd here. Okay, B to the 4th, again, that's 2, because it's even, so we're going to cross that out and make it B to the 2nd. B to the 1, we can't do anything with, so we're going to leave it as B to the 1. And C to the 2nd, we're going to divide by 2, so 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're going to make it C to the 1 and cross that out. So the only thing we didn't cross out was 2 and B, so that stays underneath our square root sign as 2B. All right? And that's our final answer. Well, I hope that clears up some misconceptions. So again, you can review this video, or you can, like I said, just look back at your YouTube videos. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me or contact me. Thanks, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.